the session and Dr. Vishal for such our for session is per operative cholangiography. I would like to invite our ex chairpersons, Dr. N.R. Dali. Dr. Jay Chaudhary has 17 years of Jaipur. Welcome, sir.
Speaker is Dr. Puneet Dhar. Dr. Puneet Dhar did his MBBS gastroenterology in AIIMS Rishikesh. We welcome you, sir, and I request you to start the sessions, please.
Thanks so much for the introduction, and it's lovely to be here in Jaipur. After
I request you to start the sessions, please.
Thanks so much for the introduction, and it's lovely to be here in Jaipur. After
I request you to start the sessions, please. I think it's echoing.
I think there's an echo with a lot of delay. It's exciting to be here in Jaipur with the continuation of the SG week. And I think this department is going to go great guns. It's got an excellent combination of experience, erudite experience, and energetic youth. So it's definitely going to go a long way. My best wishes for the same. My own remit is to talk on intraoperative cholangiography, which was first actually interestingly described by Miridzi only. He suggested it in 31 and first described in 37. By then, another gentleman in the US had actually popularized it as well. So it's basically visualization by a contrast medium directly injected into a duct. Initially, it used to be done by simple skygrams, but now more commonly it's done by a C-arm. So why should we do it? Is basically to identify anomalous anatomy. And I think as we heard from morning, in India, we probably do it mostly for this. It's usually used before exploration of bile duct for suspected stones, where you want to make sure that, before you explore, you want to confirm that those stones are indeed there. If there's either a history of jaundice or prior pancreatitis, or there's been an evidence of stones, but you don't actually feel that there might be stones there, there's any doubt of that. You can also do it post-exploration after a T-tube, after a successful or unsuccessful exploration. If you put in a T-tube, you can actually do a completion that will also be technically an intraop cholangiogram. It's also used to identify other biliary lesions like strictures, dilatations, and all that whenever there's a doubt. It's, I think, enough evidence that it can identify for sure, possibly prevent, and definitely reduce the severity of duct injury. But for some reason from morning we've heard it's not used very frequently. A lot of recent guidelines and evidence. It can definitely reduce malpraxis claims because you can actually show a lot of stuff in that to support your statements. It could also be a potential aid to conversion in some of those bailout and all the other difficult steps that we did. We could use some kind of a contrast study to actually see whether we need to convert now. It's getting out of hand and we might need to convert. Again, this is a slightly dodgy issue now because most of the younger generation is not so good with the open. So I think they're more familiar with lap, and I've heard a lot of arrogant statements saying that if I can't do it lap, nobody else can do it open either. I think we need to be sort of worried about that, and that's why we need to get other colleagues in. So what's the case against it? Why don't we do it routinely? There is a element of radiation exposure to the entire team. There are issues of safety. You might actually cause damage. It's also a lack of familiarity of the surgeons into the radiological domain, which becomes a vicious cycle because if we don't train, the next generation doesn't do it. So I think in our country, it's firmly established that it's only going to be selective and never going to be routine. So I was also trained like that. But when I was in UK, The transplant team was a subset of the HPB. So whenever we were called upon to do lab colis, we had to. There was a protocol to do it. So I realized it wasn't all that difficult. So that's the funny bit, that if you're doing it routinely, it actually doesn't increase time. But that's the reason given by all the selective doers, that it increases operating time, it increases potentially cost. Is the C-arm available to you or not? There's a risk of injury, especially if the visual perception is already, the error has already taken place. So if you think it's the cystic duct and you're going to put, and it's actually the CBD and you've already done, so you can actually cause a damage. But then, I mean, I think it's not that tenable an argument, because you're going to definitely, if you find that on the cholangiogram, you're going to restrict it exactly at that rather than resect that CBD, which is probably a much more difficult thing to do. Also, there's a possibility of false positive air bubbles and such like, and which can result in unnecessary bile duct exploration. And also, I think there's a huge over-reliance on the non-surgical cholangiogram, the ERCPs and the MR and all that. So alternatives are a pre-op MRCP, intraoperative ultrasound, which is very useful. The fluorescent, which we're going to hear about in the next one, and I think we're going to see much more of that. As somebody alluded, that's probably better for the extrahepatic, and even for the even in difficult acute cholecystitis and all that. I think before you cut it, you can still get through to the fluorescence. It's there. So I think we had some argument on that in the morning. But as alluded to by our organizing chairman, I think it's important to have somebody else have a look, because it should not be a combination of not understanding, the heuristic errors and hubris. The combination can be quite devastating. So you also have the option of doing post-op ERCP. So because of that, I think there is a reluctance for many people, surgeons who are generally prone to technology. They're not used to on a regular basis. So technically, we need an entry which can be either through the cystic duct, it can be through the CBD direct puncture, it can be through the gallbladder or cholecystocholangiogram if there's a doubt, and post-exploration as a T-tube cholangiogram. Ideally, you should get your critical view of safety, widely dissect, make sure that what you're going to put into, because cystic is probably the commonest, is the cystic duct. It's important to have a radiolucent tabletop, which has a capacity to be able to do Trendelenburg and reverse Trendelenburg, and the side right and left rotations. A variety of catheters you can use, either some of them are soft tip, which are easy to go in. That has sometimes a problem with the valve of Heaster. So some people have actually suggested a steel tip. So it's a good idea to have all these in your armamentarium. You can also use clamps and balloons. So that's one of the common varieties in the West that is used, where you can either have a deflecting or a thing to grasp, which can clamp the proximal part of the gallbladder or the infundibulum, and a tube which comes out and can be inserted into the cystic duct after the cut has been made. So that's the way it can be done. Or you can have, this is one of the more popular ones in India, I think, where you can have this system where it comes out through the thing and you can clamp it. You don't need to necessarily put a clip. But I think the commonest way is actually to use a proximal clip and a distal catheter. Or you can use a balloon catheter, and I can just show you a blown up view of that. So a variety of these options you can use to instill the contrast into the biliary tree. Cystic duct is almost always successful. You can do it cholecystocholangography, especially if you're going to use a Veress needle, if it is an external one. Very rarely you might need to do a common duct puncture, especially if there is a prior cholecystectomy, or you're suspecting, you find the ultrasound is suggestive of stones, but you actually don't. That's the one case I remember doing it in GB Pant, where there was a GB agenesis, and to prove that we had to do a CBD puncture. So the cannulation, it's better to do it onto the GB side as much as possible. Just cauterize a bit on the surface to avoid any bleed from the area you're going to cut. Either a hook or a scissor, or even hook scissors, can be used to give a precise partial cut. It's important to give traction on the gallbladder neck, and that, as Sadiq said in the morning, it should be 10 o'clock. The vertical orientation you may need to adjust while actually trying to jiggle the catheter into the duct, because sometimes that can be a problem. and or you can insert a catheter through a 14 and you can use this catheter either through a 14 or 16 gauge percutaneous needle, which I find the most convenient. It's just like our those bone marrow needles or something. It's a short needle which can go through the abdominal wall. Just give a small nick on the skin and then insert this, and then through that you can have a fitting with that 14-16G, the 5 mm the 5 French thing goes very easily. Or you can use a 5 mm port. I find that a little more fiddly because of the angle. Also, you have 2 sets of ports sort of available to you should you need to do any jiggling and all that. So a separate needle is probably okay, and it's actually not seen post-op. So that might be the best way to go. And that's just you need to get it through a variety of maneuvers. So basically, you need to clear the air bubbles using saline before you actually put the catheter in. So what I found very useful is use a 3-way stopcock with saline in one and the contrast in the other. Flush out with saline and ask the assistant to continuously dribble drop by drop till you actually go in, because air bubbles are the single most important differential diagnostic issues. And then there is some belief that you should use half-strength contrast. But many people have shown that it depends on the percentage of iodine. If it is, if the earlier ones used to be 60, that's why there's a huge thing to actually dilute it by half. But most of the ones which we use, Conray and Hypec and all that, they're all actually about 30. So it's the iodine content. So you probably don't need to do it. A minimum of 5 cc would be needed, up to 15 cc if you need to repeat it, or you dilute it. Sometimes you might need more if you're doing it directly into the GB itself, a cholecystocholangiogram. So another thing I normally do is to take out an equivalent amount of bile to make sure that you're not getting too much of pressure inside. It also sort of confirms that it is bile and there's a free flow, and that you're in case you've used a clip on the distal side, that's not too tight. So that gives you all those information that single withdrawal will give you. And slowly inject under real-time fluoroscopic view. Observe the flow first distally and then proximally, because that's easier. You can use gravity, so use Trendelenburg, reverse Trendelenburg, to make sure that you visualize the entire biliary tree. The bed position also for the proximal ducts. It's important to observe the cystic duct junction to the CBD. That is because that can have variations and errors in perception again. If there's only distal flow, it's important to pull back a tad, and you might use sort of hypotonic techniques, but some people have even used morphine to cause a spasm of the sphincter foci so that the proximal bit is seen. But very rarely you might need to put even a distal, some kind of a temporary obstruction. So in the pullback, you remove the clip holding the catheter, do a sharp Trendelenburg, inject real time and slowly pull back and keep injecting. Slowly you should see the filling of the cystic duct, and then you'll see the proximal ducts being. This is important particularly for gallbladder, because we might have had, the worry we have is the ducts on the right side, if they're either aberrant or Luschka. True Luschka is actually rare, but it's mostly an aberrant duct. If there's no proximal filling, you might consider, but this is a last option, some kind of a bulldog, if it's open, or some kind of a similar soft clamp of the distal duct, but not very strong, suggestions for that. Important to avoid injury, so careful of the technique. You could tear the cystic CBD junction if that the catheter sort of rushes to pass very fast. It can actually abrade, or if the assistant is actually pulling back on the, it gives a sharp jerk on the thing without looking at it. So there has to be very good coordination between the assistant as well. There could be a tenting injury on the CBD itself while clipping, or you can perforate the CBD with a rigid catheter through and through from inside. You could even directly puncture the CBD. You can have a sphincter foci injury if you use a balloon. You might use too much of volume or too much of pressure, so careful with your Boyle's law. There could be cholangitis, endotoxemia. It's important to interpret it correctly also. So, as Sadiq said in the morning, I think one of the things is that we are not getting it in real time, unlike the NIRF. you're extrapolating in your brain what you're seeing there. So ideally, it still is the surgeon is a better one, not a remote radiologist, which is popular in the West in some countries where the images are now beamed through technology into the radiologist who has no idea about the anatomy. So it's a good idea if the surgeon actually collates that mentally there, right there. It's important to identify on the radiogram. So surgically, we don't want to see the cystic CBD junction, but identify this bit at least, because that gives you lots of clues. It's important to look at the emptying of the contrast into the duodenum and look for filling defects in the bile duct. So I think air bubbles are the commonest, and you can confirm this by using gravity. So changing it from Trendelenburg to anti-Trendelenburg, you can see the air bubbles tend to move upwards with gravity, and stones tend to slowly float downwards. So that way you might be able to do. The other way is to actually flush out with bland saline, then again put more dilute contrast, and then try it again. So it's important to interpret the proximal biliary filling, because that's where we can detect. So if you have a pre-op MR or something, you can actually compare with that, or make sure that you see all the entire proximal biliary tree, particularly on the right side, that it's filled up. Also, to look for you must be able to identify all the anomalies, CBD injury and leaks. I've actually deleted some of the slides to show you in the interest of time. Now, the controversy is whether it should be done routinely or selectively. So the logic is that, quite a large proportion of stones, which is the reason we do it the most in our country, is clinically occult. So you might be able to diagnose them. However, 6% of these can be without any liver test changes or any changes in the duct diameters. But not sure the relevance of this, because quite a large proportion of these actually pass out spontaneously even after cholecystectomy. So whether we really need to detect these is dubious. Then 50% of those with high risk factors for stones actually don't have stones as well. So whether we should really do it, so that's the logic, which is so you could argue both ways depending on your philosophy. But the funny thing is, when it's done routinely, all the centers do it routinely, it's quick and sensitive. And when it's done selectively, it isn't. It takes longer time, and the interpretation is poor. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think it's important to understand the logic behind it. And population data does suggest that it can be protective for bile duct injury. So the initial systematic reviews, including many of the Indian studies, and there are not too many of them, but they tend to be self-fulfilling prophecies of confirmation bias. That there is no evidence to suggest that it should be used routinely. But actually, earlier this year, there's a lovely study from Sweden, which is a huge 2 million patients. So Sweden has complete reporting. Almost, I think, 90% of all gallbladder, all these problems are reported. So it's 2 million cholecystectomies with including 9,000 bile duct injuries. So a huge population-based thing. It's just come out in the BJS Open, and very clearly there's an increased risk for bile duct injury when it is used only selectively. So they conclude that its routine cholangiogram during cholecystectomy does reduce the risk of bile duct compared with the selective strategy. So why this is an important study is, unlike the others which are confirmation bias, this study was actually done because in Sweden they do it routinely. It's a protocol to do it routinely. So they did this study to see whether they can shift from a routine to a selective practice. So I think this is a harder evidence than all the others where you're trying to prove what you feel is correct. So likewise, I mean, last year there was the practice guidelines from multi-society, the AHPBA, the IHPBA, the SSAT, several societies, the SAGES, and I think the European GE surgeons, EAGES, they all combined to give these guidelines and made us, amongst other things, I think some people refer to this guidelines, but regarding the intraoperative cholangiogram, a strong recommendation was made for use of intraoperative biliary imaging for uncertainty of anatomy or suspicion of biliary injury. So so their fourth question was whether should intraoperative biliary imaging be versus no intraoperative biliary imaging, and they said liberal use to mitigate the risk of bile duct injury. So to summarize, I think it's very important to stress that it's very useful for identifying anatomy and for stones and other lesions. It can prevent or definitely identifies the single most important and probably make it less severe, but gradually more evidence that it might actually prevent, whether we like to believe it or not. Whether we should do it routinely or selectively still not very clear, subject to controversy. And I think the fluorescence imaging has made a huge dent. So if it's not available, it's definitely useful. It's a good thing to have in your armamentarium, and technique and interpretation are extremely important. India, we have very few studies. I think the first series was by Dr. BML Kapoor, which was, again, it showed about 20%. This is about, I think, in 1809 or something. Then I think Professor Vinay did a survey of Indian studies, and interestingly, over that's I think about 26 years back. And another one from Kashmir and a couple of others, which interestingly showed roughly about 20 to 25% usage. So I think there might be a case for, with the huge bile duct injury load we have, of actually trying to use this in armamentarium more usefully. Chris, I think in the future, I think we do need to train our juniors, because it's going to be the less they know, just like the open surgery, the less they're going to actually learn about it and use it usefully. So I think it's important to use artificial intelligence or simulation models. I thank you for the patient listening.
Excellent presentation, Dr. Puneet. As always, now for the first time, always there's a very elaborative presentation from your side. We have Dr. Jay with us, who is actually a radiologist, and you have given a very strong statement in between that actually rather than a radiologist, surgeon should interpret it. So maybe Dr. Jain, you can have a good controversial discussion on that, and then we can add into it.
No, I think I probably came across badly. What I would say is the combination would be far better. There's no doubt about that. I was just contesting the US use only, somebody sitting remotely without seeing it.
Actually, you are absolutely right. I am also not a very big supporter of a concept of a remote radiologist. The radiologist, either he should be present there, otherwise seeing only the
nightmare.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir.
Do we have any questions from the audience, or if we have, maybe you can send it on the chat. And in the meantime, sir, regarding the training for the perioperative cholangiogram, actually when we came back from SGPJ in 2006, we started, we thought how to do it, and that time it was more difficult. Now it is more easier. So we started a system. I think Sachin was in the chairing one of the last sessions when we did it together, that every Thursday, that was what we allocated, and every Thursday we'll do 2 cholangiograms, whatever is the lap chole. So we used to do almost three lap choles daily. So we do 2 cholangiograms every Thursday, so that the team gets tuned and our systems get tuned. That was how we did it.
I think that's absolutely important. Even if you intend doing it selectively, the whole team must be used to doing it routinely. So even if you want to do it selectively, you should be able to do it routinely, because otherwise, when you need it, it's going to be useless. So it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I am coming to that, because now the thing is, once you do it, then the second thing, most important thing is the interpretation of that cholangiogram. I think most of the cholangiograms are being done to identify a CBD stone, not for a bile duct injury. Neither they are being done for preventing a bile duct injury. The intent is to identify CBD stone. So do you think that after seeing all this data, that doing a cholangiogram will prevent a bile duct injury?
I mean, the data certainly seems to show.
I'm asking that's what we have seen in the data. Now I see your personal opinion.
My answer is that if there's such a huge push for NIRF, so obviously everybody feels they're just uncomfortable with the technique. I mean, the answer is there clear. If everybody has the availability of the fluorescence and all that, they're going to use, everybody will say, yes, I'll use it. So that means it's just the unfamiliarity with the technique. So you have your answer there. So I think, yes, we should use it to, especially when there's any doubt. So instead of the 20%, we should be somewhere around 40 to 60%, at least the entire cohort where the CVS is not seen. What was alluded in the morning. So at least that cohort should have it, and all the others where there's doubt of, where the doublet is showing some aberrant duct and stuff like that, where it should be there, yeah.
Okay, fine. Dr. Kapoor has already shown me a red signal that we are running out of time. So just one last thing, that usually what we see that, as it has been discussed this morning, that most of the lap chole bile duct injuries happen with the beginners, lack of experience, and the newcomers, or not able to do it properly, or difficult gallbladder. Do you think these are the scenarios where cholangiogram is going to help? Because these beginners, it will be more difficult for them to do.
So, I mean, if it's again, it's as a routine. So, I mean, to tell you truthfully, I think I did most fluently when I was as a consultant in UK, which is the most embarrassing because I was always worried that if I fail, it's going to show me down as a grey-haired, young person there. So, I think it is, what you're saying is exactly the setting we need it. But like you said, it is a difficult one. So unless it's ingrained in the system itself, so for them to learn it, it needs to be routine rather than, I mean, sorry, I'm coming back to that same point. But yes, that is a segment we need it in for sure. But there is a bimodal distribution. So I think as, I know what I'm doing comes in, that the second peak of the mode also comes in.
So just one point, is it ethically correct if everything is all right? If the MR is okay, the LFTs are okay, there's no suspicion of the CBD.
So why would you do MR?
Therefore, there was a suspicion, but everything is all right. Is
So
it
if there is a
ethically
suspicion,
correct
then
or
it's
something
ethically
which is-
absolutely justified to do it. Why would you not want to do it? Because this is far more, I mean, I can tell you MRs where a lot of things was, we, for a time, a couple of years, we actually gave up MRs for donor evaluation. We were only doing intraop cholangiograms for looking for the donor bile duct changes, bile duct anomalies.
Then the question would come, why do it selectively? Why select one particular case?
Wherever you have a very high index of doubt of injury or your pre-op imaging has shown a stone, but you can't palpate anything. So before you open up, you would like to do it. But there's one issue, I think one thing that you point out, which might be important is that if your philosophy is to leave it alone, then probably it is not wise to do it.
Yeah.
So I think you should have
Because
the
you can
reason, it's just like doing a frozen
extend the
section and
logic
not
to
following
say-
up with a frozen section.
I'll practice an anticipatory extended cholecystectomy in the hope that I'll do it one day more better. Something like that kind of a logic. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure whether it's ethically absolutely correct.
I'm not sure of the ethical issue because I mean, you have a clear reason. So I believe every investigation should be done if it can change your management. So, I've seen lots of times you send the frozen comes positive and you still go ahead with a certain thing. So it should not be like that. That is litigable. So everything that you do should have. So if your algorithm is going to change because of what you do, I think that is completely ethical.
It can cause a complication also.
So everything, I think surgery can cause more complications.
That is
we were in the morning, we were ready to do asymptomatic gallbladders in the entire Indian population.
We debated
And
that.
nobody had an ethical issue about that.
That
I
is
have very
debated.
strong ethical issues about that.
Yes, absolutely.
Dr. Puneet, can I just see my point is that for CBD stone, you can do a selective cholangiogram in moderate or high risk cases. But if you want to use cholangiogram to prevent a bile duct injury, you have to do it in every case because you don't know in which case an injury will occur.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. That's the whole case that they're trying to present.
I have a question which is more of a practical nature. How you are doing a difficult cholecystectomy and you find that the Gallett's triangle is frozen. And in that situation, you are attempting to do a cholangiogram. Am I understanding it correct?
Yeah, you could use it. So they
How if the Gallett's triangle is frozen, you cannot identify the cystic duct. How do you propose to?
several ways of doing it. You can actually do it
Direct puncture.
through even the GB. You'll of course use more. If you have balloon catheters, you can wedge it into the towards the CBD and do it. So there are a variety of options open to
No,
you.
you have to access the CBD directly. Putting a catheter into the gallbladder and hoping that the contrast will go into the CBD, I think is asking for the moon.
No. I mean, if you can put in, that's also described. You put in a Veress needle into the gallbladder. You just need more contrast.
Does it ever go into the
Oh
CBD?
yeah, of course.
Okay, I haven't tried that.
No,
Yeah,
it is.
these are all described. I think there's techniques which are described how to handle a difficult gallbladder, how to do a cholangiogram.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
particularly, I think in a lab, if you have, what I found is a lot of times when I joined in late for a lab session, the junior has actually dissected out more mid-body. So I think that's another place where it can help you to find out that, you're not left with a long, some in situ gallbladder, because they would end up, there's a slight narrowing next to the infundibulum. That's another place where it's very, very useful to convince them that you need to go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Punita. It's an excellent presentation. So we proceed with the next one. Before we proceed, we have a tea in the hall, in the dining area. If anybody wants to go for a tea, it's ready, it's available. Evening 8 o'clock onwards, we have our banquet at Marriott. So all are invited for the banquet dinner today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Puneet sir, for such a elaborative talk on intraop cholangiography. I hope by passing time, it will become a standard of protocol in lab quali for preventing the bile duct injuries. And thank you, Ajay sir, for chairing the session, and Jay sir.